Hey, real quick before we get into this one, on Sunday, May 11th, I have my first EB02 tournament. It is a case tournament. We have 8 or 9 rounds of Swiss into a top cut. We have top 16 prizing. Proxies are legal for the new EB02 cards and should be a good time. So make sure to check it out if you haven't already. If you have any questions, let me know and enjoy the video.
Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and we've got the first full week of the TCG Matchmaking weekly power rankings for the English version of the EB02 meta of the One Piece card game. And honestly, I'm really excited to see what changes in this week. I know this is like a little mini set for when it comes to One Piece, the card game, but it does have a lot of impact for what this meta looks like, and it's really cool to see what's changed, even though it's just a couple cards for a couple decks and that kind of thing. So real quick before we get started, first, if you guys can't tell, I am a little bit sick right now. I'm overcoming like a cold, so I'm a little bit more like monotone than usual and a little coffee, so I do apologize for that if it happens in the video. And then also, big shouts to both TCG Matchmaking and Sakura Kingdom for making this happen. They do a lot of work for getting these stats for these games and getting them very accessible for you guys. So make sure to check out the TCG Matchmaking Patreon as well as Sakura Kingdom's YouTube channel. They go way more into the stats for there, so I highly recommend you guys checking that out. And then lastly, if you guys want any of the data, any of the deck lists, anything about this for this week or many others, you can find them on my website linked below. We've been going through these every week as they have them, and we've been doing tournament deck lists for OP10, and we'll be continuing to do that once we get into EB02 events in a week or so. So make sure to check that out if you haven't already, and let's go to the weekly power ranking. So real quick, the rating is based off a function of population and win rate, so it helps out if your leader has a good win rate but also has a lot of matches. Just means that if there's one guy who's really good with a weird leader, doesn't mean that the rating's really high, and conversely, if just making sure that trying to even it out, right? Because there are some decks, because the sample size is lower than others, it does kind of impact the win rate for some of them too. But of that, we have the new green and purple Luffy as the first place. We do have Shanks right underneath it. We have Teach, we have Luchi, we've got Bonnie, Vega Punk, OP09 Lim, the Enel, the purple Luffy, and the Smoker as well. So generally speaking, looking at like the top 4 or 5, right, these are kind of standard leaders, right? Shanks and Teach have been really relevant for all of OP09. Interesting enough, Doflamingo did not make it into this week either. It was pretty much the best leader in OP09 format, right? Then also we do have, like, it did get a resurgence kind of in OP10, and I do think like the fact that it does have, from what I've seen, a really bad matchup in a green purple Luffy makes it really difficult for it to get a bit of a stand in this meta in general. We also do have Luchi and Bonnie just being consistent leaders from OP07, still doing very well. The Vega Punk, a newer leader to be on the scene from OP07 and to get some cool support, and then also just a lot of like interesting leaders. I do think like there are some formats where like you look at the top 10 list and you're like, oh, these are the 10 that are viable, and then there's also somewhere like, oh, only the top 5 are viable, the rest are not so viable. This is definitely still a meta where I think like, oh, 10 of these leaders are viable, but there's still a couple more extending past this 10. I still think there's a lot of different leaders that are valuable right now, and I do think that there are some decks that did get some new support that people need to kind of figure out what their deck builds look like and kind of need to commit to that, and maybe haven't done so far. So I also think that this will be pretty volatile since it is the first week of EB02. There's also a lot of people who are still practicing for OP10 events because that is happening this weekend, and so the format in paper, right, doesn't officially start till next week anyways, but I do think that this is a good kind of basis of what kind of week 1 looks like as well. So also looking at the win rate chart, so you can check this out. In case you guys need help kind of deciphering this too, you are playing as the leader on the left. So if you are playing Luffy and you're playing against Shanks, you have a 52.4% win rate. And you'll see that the green and purple Luffy has a pretty solid win rate across the board. And you see the reason why we have Luchi and Bonnie a little bit more present, because it does have this positive matchup into green purple Luffy. Even though Luchi doesn't have Ice Age anymore, it's still the best deck, in my opinion, to consistently remove a Sanji and Pudding on the turn that it's played, so that does help at that matchup a lot. And then Bonnie just has a lot of defensive tools that helps it get to the late game, makes it really obnoxious for kind of green purple Luffy to go for game, and it can really punish you with a Hody Jones to prevent like a Gum Gum Giant or the blockers coming up. And I think that Bonnie, just because of that, both these decks have like really good relevance because they do have a good matchup in the green purple Luffy. We do have Also Shanks and Blackbeard to some extent, where they do just have like really good matchups across most of the board. Blackbeard is a little bit more polarizing. We do see it has a really negative win rate against green purple, which pops up. Also having a bad matchup against the Vega Punk is really interesting, but can also be a little bit devastating for the deck too. We do also have the Rob Luchi, which again, and Bonnie, honestly, in both the fact that these decks do have like a little bit of an issue into the traditional Shanks and Blackbeard, right? Those are bad matchups for it, but again, with the Luffy being a deck that's really good against the best deck in the format, does help you out a lot. We do also have the Vega Punk, which again does have a bit of polarizing matchups, right? Like you can see most of them, right? Most of them are either just straight in their favor or straight uphill in a lot of ways, but I do think there will be a lot of Vega Punk, and part of it is because the deck is a little bit weird. It does have a bit of a learning curve to play as, but also playing against it, and I do think that will make it a little bit harder to, or do a little bit maybe better in the first couple weeks because of people having to adapt to the weirdness of the deck. Bonnie, again, has some like uphill matches, specifically Rob Luchi, which that deck being more present because of the green-purple Luffy does hurt a little bit, but I do think it's something that it can still overcome. Purple Luffy is just kind of like the Shanks, but with a little bit more red, right? Most matchups are winnable, but the fact that, they're not in your favor, like they're like minus 0.5 or something like that, it means that you never have like a matchup where you can never like super win, but it is very tough. And honestly, green purple Luffy does a lot of what kind of purple Luffy wants to do, but a little bit better. So I do think some people will be kind of transitioning to green purple Luffy because of that. Lim, I think, is in a pretty good spot. The fact that this leader also is just so dependent on going first does help, I think, in some matchups. I do think like green purple Luffy generally wants to go second to be more consistent, but can go first, so it can steal that away from you, which is kind of tough. Smoker, I think, will be a little bit more relevant because it is very good at interacting with the 5/7 Sanji and Pudding because of the mole gun, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and also just stunning them either. It's kind of like a more aggressive version of Bonnie, so it does help in that matchup a lot. We do still have like a bad matchup into Rob Luchi, but that I think can be overcome in their own way. And then Enel is just kind of in this weird spot, kind of the same thing as Vega Punk, where either your matchup is like in your favor or just strictly not in your favor. So we'll see how that kind of develops, but these are just kind of the matchups for the power ranked deck list and leaders. And let's go over the deck list for the top 10 leaders. Starting off, we've got the new deck in the format, which is the green and purple Luffy. Now, I think for deck construction for this deck, you have kind of a core of about 40 cards or so, but then you have some choices outside of that for how you want to fill those extra 10 spots. The most important card in this deck is the Sanji and Pudding. This card being able to get you some card draw in like the mid to late game, the fact that it helps you counteract your leader losing too much Dawn. If you're able to kind of establish two of these on board, you win like a lot of your games just because these are hard to get rid of. They have a lot of offensive pressure and just make you get like a lot of Dawn towards the end of your game, which is really good. So because of that, we have a lot of searchers for this. We've got the new one-drop Nami, we've got Zoro Juro, and we also do have the when you're at sea, you fight pirates. This also finds any Straw Hat Crew cards, so not just characters, but also events as well as the stage. So the fact this searches everything is insane. So that does mean like even if you trigger off life, you can look out the top of your deck for like a Gum Gum Giant or you're going Merry in case you need that for the next turn. We also do have the Secret of Luffy. I do know that this card is very expensive right now. Honestly, I think this can be at 2 or 3 copies. I wouldn't run it any less than 2, and honestly, in my own builds, I play it at 3 copies, so don't feel like you have to play a full play set of this. If you have 1 or 2 copies, like you can definitely play the deck and try it out, and then if you like the deck and the play style, I suggest investing in more. But I think 3 is the sweet spot, but you can definitely run 4 if you want to. It is a great ender for a lot of matchups a lot of the time, but I feel like you only really need to kind of establish 1 or 2 in most of your games. And again, we've got so many ways to draw cards, to be able to look further into our deck for Straw Hat cards. I think that's really, really important. So we play a lot of 2Ks and that are purple, the Usohachi and the Usohachi. We play the Sanji, which can also be a blocker. More times than not, we're going to be at less Dawn than our opponent, so this will be a 3-drop blocker for most of the game. And then we also do have the Luffy Taro. I do think that this is a decision card in this meta right now. I don't think it's super needed, but don't let me stop you from playing the card. I think 2 copies is the max I would play in this deck right now. But there are some times like maybe you want to be able to like play Zoro Juro on like 5 Dawn instead of your Sanji Pudding, and then you Luffy Taro into Sanji Pudding. If you think that they have a way to interact with your 5-drop, I think being able to play a 2 cards at the same time, some opponents just really can't interact with that. So I do think that can be really helpful in those matchups as well. We do have the Electrical Luna. I think this has been very strong in green, purple Luffy. Definitely a tech card, I think, running. Honestly, like I say tech card, I think it's a staple almost at this point. I think most people are playing this card. So definitely 2 to 3 copies. You can run 4 if you really want to. I think you can also supplement it with copies of Gamma Knife as well if you want to be able to have a little bit more removal potential per, attacking into things directly. So I do think that's helpful. Also, Gamma Knife is findable off when you're at sea because it is a Heart Pirates card. So that is helpful. And then lastly, we do have the Zoro, which I honestly play this card at 4. The fact that this is like the only removal we have in our deck, I think helps the deck a lot. We can also play 7-cost Sanji if we want to, but it's a little bit slow to get there, and it's kind of like a little bit too late for what we're doing because we're kind of at like 5 Dawn for a lot of the mid game, and so we can't really get to 7, and we can't really afford to. And once we can get to 7, interacting with a 6 cost is a little bit behind the curve. So again, I do think that there's just a lot of green and purple cards that fit into this deck. You do have to make sure to play around your Luffy effect because you can only use it if you only have Straw Hat cards, which this is not a Straw Hat card. This is a animal and Foxy Pirate, but the fact that it is a blocker means that you can just block with it immediately. Just be careful against playing decks that can rest things. But this one you can kind of play around since you can play it out, get the Dawn back, and then block with it. So this is kind of the exception. So you can kind of play blockers if you that are off meta or off Straw Hats if you know that you're just going to block with them immediately. So anyways, this is the green and purple Luffy. You guys will know this deck. You guys will like it or hate it, and it's going to be, I think, here for most of this meta and probably a good amount of OP11, assuming though major changes between our meta and their meta too. So this is the build here, and let's go next to the Shanks build. So honestly, like Shanks is just kind of how it is. You have such a weird card pool where you have a lot of different things you can have on your low end, but then like the top end's the most important thing for this deck, and none of your low end really has synergy with your top end, right? Like it's like I shift to having 8 Dawn now, so I have my 8 Dawn plays, right? That's like the big difference, right? You do have like some chances for searchers, right? The fact that Ucha can help you find your Ben Beckman, your Lucky Roo, as well as your 10-cost Shanks. I do think that's helpful. You can help you in that matchup, but I've seen a lot of builds with like Straw Hat Luffy. I think that's important too. I do think the fact that Lucky Roo can't get rid of a Sanji and Pudding does make this card a little bit worse in this meta because it only gets rid of 6 costs, and Sanji and Pudding is a 7 cost, which I do think also means that maybe we might want to start investing into cards such as the Building Snake, especially if you're playing the Uta Searcher, because that can get you some good removal potential against that card if needed, especially since, again, Green Purple Luffy, unless they're playing Zoro, they really can't get rid of the Building Snake, and it just means it's a great removal target for you in the kind of the mid to late game. But I do think that this deck is still going to be very present, right? Like it's just a solid build, right? You honestly, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It's generally not your fault one way or the other. It's just kind of how you draw your cards. But I do think that Shanks is still in a good spot. If you still like a build of Shanks and you believe in it, you should definitely still go for it. So I don't have a lot more to say. I think this is just a build of Shanks. I think there's 100 unique ones out there, but they just kind of still boil out to be about the same, even though there can be such differences in their card pools. So this is the build here for Shanks. And then next up, you've got Teach, and I do think Teach changes a little bit. You do have to kind of adapt to maybe trying to beat Green Purple Luffy, and I think the best way to do that is adding back copies of Laboon. I think most people were taking this card out of their deck, or if they were playing it, at like 2 copies or so. I do think this is something that you kind of want to play at 4 copies, just because you are able to play it on 4, and then if they play Sanji Pudding, you can do something like, oh, well, I can Laboon and then Finger Pistol, right, or Black Hole, right? The fact that even if they have the Merry Go, you can use the Laboon for that removal, I think is really great. Kind of the same thing with like Von Augur, right? And you can even use like Kuzan to help you with that as well. So, and then if they don't have the Merry Go, you can just use Laboon and Doc Q to be able to get the removal. So that is really helpful for that matchup. But I think Teach is still relevant for what it is, especially like if Doflamingo is going to be less popular because Green Purple Luffy is more popular. That does help you with that matchup being gone a little bit. We don't have any new cards that we really play right now. I know there's some new cards that people have been attacking in OP11, and we will have the new starter deck for Teach with OP11's release here in North America. But until then, I think we're just kind of playing the same kind of builds. I think the Casino build is still worth being played as well. It can have some interactions too, but there's not much differences for Teach, I feel like, right now. So here's the build for that one. All right, and next up we've got Rob Luchi, and I do think this deck gets a little bit better in this format in general. I think the biggest reason for it is the fact that 4-drop Kuzan is such a game winner against the green and purple Luffy, right? The fact that this card, you play it on 4, they don't really have great ways to interact with it, and then you can just easily remove a Sanji and putting, even if they do have the merry-go, right? The -4 from leader attack, -1 from leader attack, -4 from Kuzan attack, and then playing something like Rob Luchi or a Who's Who, or if you're at 6, it's a little expensive or overkill, but you can heat up Rook, right? I think there's just a lot of ways to be able to get that healthy interaction to remove that Sanji putting on curve, and then it's just more difficult every turn afterwards to try to establish one. So I do think that's something that's really helpful for that matchup in general. For this deck, it does help the Rob Luchi, I think, get a little bit more of a foothold in this meta, where it was kind of struggling a little bit in OP10. It did get some good tops in regionals, and it did win an event too, but it was definitely not as good as it was, I think, in like OP09, right, with Rob Luchi having the Moria and Ice Age. I do think it misses those cards, but I'm really happy to see how people have adapted in the last couple weeks due to not having those cards, and just kind of showing that, hey, guess what, a leader that gives a cost -1 and trashes 2 on attack is just generically a good leader no matter what. I think that's been kind of proven with just kind of how the card pool for black is right now. We have so many removal cards that help with both of those effects that it's difficult to make this deck really unusable, at least until 4-drop Rebecca gets removed from the meta. If this doesn't get removed, this is from what, set 2, right, from block 2. As long as this is in the block, Rob Luchi, I think, is going to be relevant one way or the other. So I don't have much more to say about this. I think Rob Luchi is going to be strong. I do think you got to play 4 copies of Kuzan, but having Laboon as like a backup copy does feel fine. I think that's fine for what it is. I also do think that there are some like kind of smoker navy builds, as in the black smoker are like the Star Deck 14 Luffy. There is some like navy support that happened from the EB02 set as well. So I think that's something that can pop up as well as kind of a separate version of like a removal black deck that's not necessarily Rob Luchi. So we'll see if that happens. I do think Luchi is still like generically the best black deck that we have in this game right now outside of Blackbeard. So I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. So there we go. Next up, you got Bonnie, and Bonnie did get a good matchup, as we said, against green purple Luffy to help it get in this meta a little bit more. I think more people will be playing this deck because of that, which generally speaking, Bonnie's just been kind of around, right? It's been out since OP07 about a year ago, right? It's been getting a lot of tops. It's been getting, like, as a green deck, right? It's probably been the most consistent green deck in this game, right? The fact that it's been relevant for almost a full year after release is pretty remarkable. And just kind of picking up new cards here and there for each meta kind of thing. So newest card for the deck is the Tashigi from OP10, right? We did technically get a Bonnie from EB02 that is supposed to work with this deck, but I don't think a lot of people use it. I think just using the Cavendish and Carrot is just kind of better in those spots. We do also have a resurgence of the Urouge. I do think that this is still like a really good blocker, and if you are less afraid of Doflamingo being in the meta, really the only deck that could really offensively remove this while making it so you can't block with it. That does mean like you do have like another way to have this card that just gives you an extra Dawn every turn to help you use your leader effect. So I do think that's really impactful for this deck and for a couple matchups that exist that it can be kind of stinky to play against. So other than that, top end we have Hody, we've got Kid, we've got Shanks, we've got Dofi. I think Carrot and Dofi are two cards that just really help you against the green and purple Luffy deck. Just makes it so that they can't, even if you don't have a board clear, the fact that you can just stun their entire board and help them do that, I think that's really strong. The fact that the leader is an activate main does mean that even if you stun them, they can still get their plus attack, which is a little bit rough, but I do think that Bonnie's in a good spot. It's going to be a little bit more relevant than it was in OP10, and here's the build there. Next up, we've got Vega Punk, and this is also an OP07 leader like Rob Luchi and Bonnie, though it is definitely one of the most unique leaders in this game, right? It is a 2-life leader. It can't attack, but the activate main gets so much advantage. Like there's a reason that it has such restrictions, right? The fact that you can either heal 1 every turn for 1 Dawn is absurd, and the fact that you can also play a 5 cost for 1 Dawn every turn is also absurd, right? Both being able to play it into either life or into the board is just a great effect. effect, right? So generally speaking, this deck has been like mildly relevant, right? I think it's popped up every once in a while. It did get a win in an event a couple months ago too, though it's never been taken, I think, super duper seriously, right? And I do think that the one card that we did get from this set that really helps us out is the new Vega Punk. So this is a blocker, but also it says look at top 5, play up to 1 5 or lower scientist type character other than Vega Punk, then place the rest at the bottom. Then if your opponent has 2 or less characters, you have to discard a card. So having this blocker is really good, but kind of the other thing because of it is its interaction with something like Irie Quasar Help. So being able to use this to, like, you put it into your life, you're able to trigger the effect to play out your Vegapunk, and then you use the Vegapunk to be able to look top 5 to play out a scientist. Like, you can play 2 cards from the board, which also, Shaka is also a blocker. So imagine hitting a life and then your opponent establishes 2 blockers when you thought that you were potentially going for game. So I do think that's something that helps this deck. We did lose the Kingdom Come, which I think a lot of Vegapunk decks were using previously. So kind of shifting to more of this kind of like mild, like tempo deck, I think is the right play for this build. Most of the cards are scientists. We have 33, including the leader and also the Irie Quasar Help. And so we don't have that many. I think we have like half the deck are hittable targets off Vegapunk, but we should hit this almost, I think, every time. We do also have like the help from like Nami being able to get rid of a 5 cost. So if you're playing against Sanji and Pudding and they don't have the Marigo, you can get removal from there. I think Luffy's also just a backup copy of Nami, which is really strong. The Darashi being able to look at, top 5 for 2 cards with trigger is really good when like literally every card in your deck has trigger, right? Like this says, legitimately, it says, look at the top 5 cards of your deck and add 2. That's insane in a deck like this, right? With every card in the deck having trigger, you just get so much advantage from that. So I do think that this also gets a lot of benefit because people just don't know how to play against this. This is a deck that you have to kind of starve in a weird way. Even though they're at 2 life at the beginning of the game, you really can't afford to hit their life because every card has a chance to give advantage, which is really tough to deal with. And I do think that it's something that you will get a lot of free wins if you play this deck because people don't know how to play against you. So one thing I will say is that I do want to kind of fit in a couple copies of the 5/7 Ace Rush card. I do think having Rush could be important in this deck. Just because, there's a lot of decks that if they are able to wipe the board consistently kind of in the mid to late game, you just can never attack ever again, which is kind of tough to do. So I do think that's something that maybe you put a couple copies in. It doesn't have trigger, right? So you do have to be worried about that. I think there might be some Rush cards for yellow that do have triggers, but I think that's something that's impactful. You can play 10 cost Ace too if you want. I think that might be too expensive for what this deck's trying to do, at least for this build. But I think that's the only thing I'd say that I would maybe consider for this build that I don't see already. But here's the build here for Vegapunk, and again, like, you should be kind of aware of how this deck works because I do think it's going to be pretty present at least for the first couple weeks of this format. Next up, we've got another green and purple leader. It is the Lim Odyssey leader for this one. And, this has been, I think mildly more popular in the English version compared to the Japanese version of the OP10 meta. I think that kind of helps it with the fact that the Dofi matchup is a little bit less present, and like Rob Luchi could be really nasty with like Ice Age and removal when you really just need to establish a wide board with this deck. And then when you have a board, you're rewarded for it every turn. So I think a lot of decks are going to let you do that a little bit more often. It's also just so interesting to see how polarizing going first and second is with Lim. If you're someone who's really good at winning dice rolls, Lim is your leader. You're going to win so many games just by going first. It's a little bit absurd for what it is. So I do think this deck is strong in this meta right now. I do think it can also run a lot of the techs that Green Purple Luffy's running. I do like the addition of Blast Breath. I do think it's a really strong card right now. You can also play cards such as like Hell's Judgment, giving 2 things minus 3k can help you against specifically Green Purple Luffy too. We can also play Electrical Luna if we want. Like, that card is accessible to us too, which I think is very strong. So there's just like a lot of things I feel like we can activate and use in this deck, which I think help out a lot. So I think there will be some interesting new builds for this a little bit, kind of adjusting to the meta. But generally speaking, I think Lim's in a really good spot. There's a lot of great like the fact that it's so tempo based, you do have some great ways to establish that. You are going to get kind of hit by the fact that you are playing a lot of 5 costs, and I think people are going to be really respecting 5 costs with Green Purple Luffy running around, but you still get a lot of advantage just from a lot of your on plays as well. So not much more to say, but I do enjoy Lim in this format, and interested to see how it does in the next couple weeks. And the next up, we've got Enel, and I don't know how to say this. Like, Enel was pretty obnoxious for the first year of its life cycle, right? From OP05 to now, right? It got a little bit less obnoxious. Not a lot of people were playing it after Kingdom Come was banned on April 1st. And I think there's going to be a lot of like new wave of people playing it now that we've got this 10 cost Enel. This card is absurd. I know a lot of people are saying, oh man, this is like the most broken card I've ever seen. This is going to warp the game. Enel is going to be tier 0. And I can say they were half right. It is a very obnoxious card that I hate to see, but the deck is not tier 0 still. I do think that this is definitely something that if you're able to, get the value from turn after turn, you are in a good spot. I think a lot of people are, at least from like the teach matchups, being aware of like how good 10 drops are and having kind of a way to remove them if needed to. But the fact that this gets value when attacking is good. The fact that this also helps the teach matchup a little bit is really strong too, because it does let you, get that additional like attack, but also the heal, which it's generally really difficult for Enel to heal against playing against Teach specifically, so that does help us a lot. We do have just still a large top end of 4 copies of 8 drop Katakuri. We do have the Uses Kid to potentially get some burn damage and some cycle in the mid to late game. Yamato we have a couple copies of, and Ace as well. So I think all of that's just very, very strong for this deck, and it can just be very, very mean as well. So other than that, we are playing kind of our yellow low package. We do also have a new Sanji from EB02 as well. This just being like the yellow version of the Queen blocker, being able to get a draw 2 and trash 1 if your life is at 2 less, which, spoilers, your life is going to be at 2 or less for most of the game. So this is almost always just going to be a free draw 2, trash 1 off a Sanji blocker. So that's really good. We're playing the 0 cost because why would we not? And we also have the Damned Punk as a way to get some removal in the mid to late game. This also can get rid of Sanji Pudding if they don't have any versions of the Mary Goes, which again, they're not always going to have that. And that helps out quite a bit. So other than that, I think this deck is obnoxiously good right now. I don't think it's unbeatable, but I do think there will be another wave of people playing this, and another group of people are just like, man, I hate it now. This is my least favorite deck in this entire game. And I understand that sentiment, but there it is. Next up, we've got the purple Luffy, and it is purple Luffy. What am I going to say, right? It's essentially still the same deck we've been playing since the end of OP08, right? Not much has changed. I know that green purple Straw Hats got a lot better, but it was mostly on the green half of it, right? We really can't even play the secret rare, right? And we can't even play like the Sanji Pudding, really. We technically can, right? If we lose 2 or more Dawn, right, we get a Dawn back active. So if we want to like lose 2 Dawn off Sanji, then we can get the effect, right? Or like off the 2 there, we get 1 back active. So it's like 1 less technically. So maybe people will play that in that, right? We can play it off Luffy Taro, so that's fine. But strictly speaking, I think that the tried and true format for this Luffy is still just better in general. It's just a known deck. I do think it's a deck that just was has been very, very strong. I do think it's finally losing a little bit of steam, I think, in the EB02 meta, but I do know that it's getting a lot of resurgence in Japan in their current OP11 meta. It's just kind of an aggressive way to try to beat the blue purple Luffy as well. So we'll see how relevant this is in this format. I still think it's going to get a lot of tops. It still has like some consistency issues, but when this deck wants to win, it really does win. So not much more to say, but there's purple Luffy. And then lastly, we've got red and green smoker. I've been looking at too many green and purple leaders, but red and green smoker. And this is a deck that I think did a little bit of stuff in our OP10 meta, right? It didn't get a lot of tops, but it did get a couple here and there. It did technically win a regional as well. So that's really cool, but it didn't really perform, I think, highly in that meta. But I do think that it does have a bit of a meta shift for this format in particular. I think part of that is due to this also just having a good format in matchup into the green purple Luffy. We are seeing that we're playing the Jewelry Bonnie as well as the Carrot. Both these are really good for either stunning Dawn that they would have needed to play a card, or the Carrot to be able to stun a 5-drop or 7-drop, which is really, really handy. We have one of the better removal target ways to get rid of a Sanji and Pudding. Even if they have the Merry-Go, this gets rid of a 7 or less, essentially a 7k or less, right? So as long as we have a 6k body on our board, which is really easy to do, which we can also just play something and then attach a Dawn and get 2 Dawn back with their leader effect. There's just like a lot of ways that we can get that healthy interaction to be able to get removal on those cards. So I think that's really helpful for this deck. But Because of that, we aren't playing the copies of Kid, which I think is a little bit surprising. We are playing 4 copies of the 10-layer Igloo, which this is a really good defensive card. And again, when we can use 2 extra Dawn every turn, having 2 open for this card is very trivial to do. So I do think that's helpful. And if they're kind of expecting to attack with 1 card more than once, like the purple secret rare Luffy, we can give it -2k for the turn, which I think is really helpful too. So other than that, we just kind of run the standard stuff we do for Smoker. I think Ben Beckman is a bit more of a needed card for this matchup now, or for this deck in general too. I see a lot more people just playing this card when they weren't in OP10. And I'll be really curious to see what Smoker does in EB02 that it didn't do in OP10 as well. So not much more to say, but there is the Smoker build. And again, that's going to be it for this one. If you guys want to see any of the deck lists, again, you can find them on my website here. We're going to be continuing to update the website with power rankings every week, and also events that happen in the next couple of weeks of the EB02 meta as well. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you all next time.